could be called 2017 2.0, or perhaps CR versus NDZ, the remix, referring to the possibility, of course, that Cyril Ramaphosa and Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma might come December be facing off yet again in a battle for the presidency of the ANC. Of course, there are key differences between the 2017 race and this one, and the party itself is in quite a different place. Let's discuss this now with political analyst Ebrahim Fakir. Ebrahim, always so wonderful to talk to you. So, no one's actually said anything. So how likely do you think it is that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is gearing up to take on Cyril Ramaphosa in December?
It's likely, but it's not conclusive. We don't know yet. And media speculation has been correct previously. So I have no reason to doubt Sally, yourself, or your colleagues who've reported that this is the case. But I mean, remember, the process first has to be opened by the ANC. There's been a slight delay, but there's also constitutional and thresholds that have to be achieved inside the party. That means that the nomination has to be made by a province. The province obviously can't make a nomination in the dark. It must have branches in that province who make a nomination of that sort. Or alternatively, if that doesn't happen, you can be nominated from the conference floor and have a threshold of 25% of the delegates supporting your nomination and a seconder, obviously, for you to be a contestant in the race. So there are those kind of procedural and process thresholds to achieve. But I mean, I think it's fairly likely that she does enter the race. And if she does, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, you know, those who watch for the factionalism of the ANC are going to kind of rehash all of this stuff about factional differences and so on. But, you know, we don't know what she's going to stand for. We don't know what platform she's going to put out or what kind of policy posture she's going to adopt. The reason I say it's a good thing is that it introduces the idea of contestation into the ANC. I mean, I said the same thing when Mbeki stood for a third term. It was unlikely that he was going to get it, but it was good that there were people who were contesting him. It was also good when Kgalema Motlanthe contested Zuma in 2012. He had no hope of winning, but it introduced this idea of contestation. So that's the first important reason. The second is that it gets away from this idea that there's an inherent culture, emergent culture in the ANC now, and that is that the deputy president becomes an automatic successor to the president in the next round. And that was never a culture, though factionalists often posited that as a culture, but I think it does away with that now. And so I think that's two important reasons why, even if she stands an outside chance, it's an important consideration for why she contests.
It's quite a different playing field. Of course, in 2017, Zuma had to leave because he'd done his 2 terms as ANC president, so that the position was vacant. This time, Ramaphosa is the incumbent, and I would imagine there's always a certain amount of power that comes with. But also the ANC is in a very different place. I mean, the party has lost support at the polls since 2017. Over 200 members have been named implicated in corruption in the Zondo report. Party funding laws have changed, so the ANC just does not have a lot of money. How could that mix in with this?
Well, a couple corrections. First, money has dried up, but that's private funding of political parties overall. But we've got no problems with internal contestation. So parties can spend large poodles of money inside the party to contest internal positions. Of course, this has an impact in the sense that parties aren't getting large amounts of private donors that they now have to declare, those above 100,000. But there may be stashes of funds by individual candidates or groupings, or, as the popular parlance of today, factions might have war chests for internal contestation. There's no declaration or any kind of regulatory oversight over that. Of course, party statements and financials are audited, but those can be subsumed under a whole range of expenditures and so on. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. The second is that the contest, yes, you're absolutely right, is changed in the sense that you now have, there was no Zondo Commission back then. It was mooted. But now the Zondo Commission has said there are clear findings outside of it. There's a step-aside rule, of course, which is contested. But we make this assumption that ANC delegates at the voting conference are guided by these considerations. No, on the contrary, they are guided by a whole series of other considerations. One of them is the kind of patronage networks which exist inside the party. The second is under whose prospect are they most likely to succeed come the next election. Now, they've been losing support at the polls, not from 2017. There's been successive losses of the ANC nationally and in many provinces from 2009 in the order of about 0.4% of 4 percentage points, election upon election. This has been cumulative and it's been compounded. That means they lose in every election, and the number of seats they lose decreases even further every time the distribution is calculated. So in provinces like Gauteng, in 2019, the ANC managed to win a majority literally by one seat. They had 50 point something percentage support. So they were helped along by the formula in the calculation of the distribution of seats. So they were lucky in that regard. So in provinces like that, where it's marginal, they face a serious kind of difficulty, and that's part of the consideration. Do we go with someone who's likely to bring us aggregate support? But, the question is, context has changed not just for the party, context has changed for Mr. Ramaphosa himself. He's no longer coming to this completely clean. He has also, like Mr. Zuma, had to use the majority of the party in parliament in fairly crude ways to shield himself, and the party has acquiesced to this, shielded him from any kind of probity on the Phala Phala gate. And so he goes into this context where, he's also a little bit under the cloud. But as I say, I don't think that matters a great deal for ANC delegates at the voting floor. There's a whole range of other considerations they got. One is their prospects at the poll. Two is what's the internal patronage network configuration at that particular moment in time.
It's going to be very interesting to watch what happens in the next few weeks and months. Thank you so much for chatting to us. That's political analyst Ebrahim Fakir.